What? Oh my goodness. Leigh Wood is becoming a thing of legend. Lethal Leigh Wood just successfully defended his WBA featherweight title against Josh Warrington. He just knocked Josh Warrington out in the 7th round in a fight that was going all types of downhill for Leigh Wood. Leigh Wood was not looking good. Oh my goodness. Okay, I thought that the first round was even. I thought that Leigh Wood outboxed Josh Warrington in the second round. From the 3rd round on, it was almost all Josh Warrington. He looked like the faster fighter. He looked like the more durable fighter. He was beating Leigh Wood up to the top, to the body. Leigh Wood looked like he was slow. He wasn't able to find the timing. He was just getting beaten up to the point where he's over here arguing with the ref on this side about the punches behind his head. And then he's getting hit as he's arguing with 2 more, 3 more clean shots, and then 2 more to the body. He was getting beaten up. There were at least like 3 different times where it looked like his legs might be getting unsteady. It just looked like the end of the road for Leigh Wood, whether you thought that it was because he was weight drained, whether you thought that it was just because Josh Warrington on this night was a terrible matchup for Leigh Wood. Josh Warrington looked snappy. He was the more sudden puncher. He was the one getting in and then out, able to break Leigh Wood off with combinations and then get it out of the way. He won rounds 3, 4, 5, 6, and then gets knocked out in the final seconds of the 7th round, like out of nowhere. In that same round, Leigh Wood had gotten hurt like multiple times where he's getting beaten up so badly to the body, he's not even protecting his face anymore. He just has his arms down here and he's willing to absorb the shots up top. Josh Warrington was totally having his way with Leigh Wood, but Leigh Wood pulls another rabbit out of his hat. This almost had shades of Conlon versus Leigh Wood or Leigh Wood versus Conlon, because it was Leigh Wood defending his WBA featherweight belt there, but Conlon had flattened Leigh Wood in the first round and then hurt him again in the second and then in the third. It's just one of those things where you cannot count Leigh Wood out of the fight. I mean, yes, he did get knocked out by Mauricio Lara, but Leigh Wood is clearly willing to go through hell in the ring. Like in the Canelo versus Jermell Charlo fight, I think what fans wanted was a little bit more Leigh Wood in Jermell Charlo on that night. And I swear, ever since the night where Leigh Wood beat Zhu Can to capture a share of the featherweight belt, he had the fight of the year in 2022 against Michael Conlon, and then early 2023, because he took a long layoff relatively after that fight against Conlon. That was absolutely brutal. Then he gets knocked out after outboxing Lara in the early rounds, more so winning most of the rounds, and then gets knocked out against Lara, right? And then he comes back in the rematch and puts on a clinic against Mauricio Lara in a fight that Mauricio Lara blew weight by like 3 to 4 pounds, to where Leigh Wood had a difficult decision to make. He decides to get in there and fight Lara, who's overweight and maybe undertrained, it might turn out. But Leigh Wood ends up having a spectacular boxing performance and recaptures his belt. And now he's fighting, Josh Warrington. He's the favorite, a pretty sizable favorite, to where I'm thinking, hey, don't count Josh Warrington out. He fought a nearly even fight against Luis Alberto Lopez in his very last fight. So I looked at Josh Warrington as being a super live dog. I didn't think he was going to dominate in the rounds 3 through nearly the end of 7 in the way that he did. I mean, look, I thought Leigh Wood was about to get stopped. His body language, the way he was walking back to his corner, how unsteady his legs looked, not like they were super like spaghetti legs and wobbly, just kind of stuck on the canvas. Like he gets hit and then it's almost like his legs get stuck in a way where he starts to lean forward in the way that some fighters who get knocked out face first their legs lock up. Instead of jelly leg, they stiffen. I thought that I saw that in Leigh Wood in a couple moments here. But boy, just when you think, all right, finally, this is the end of the road for Leigh Wood. It's been a fun ride, and it has been a fun ride. I mean, and it's all, at least in this stage of his career. I mean, he lost to Jazza Dickens like a few years ago. But ever since that Zhu Can fight, which was about 2 years ago now, Leigh Wood has just been one of those must-see fighters in the sport. Like, whether you think he's an A-level talent, or whether you think he's a future Hall of Famer, or whether you think he's a top 15 to 20 even pound-for-pound fighter, you have to see Leigh Wood fights. It's one of those you got to see it to believe it types of phenomena that we're seeing here. And this is a perfect embodiment of that. Oh my gosh. I was almost certain that Leigh Wood was about to not only lose, but was about to get stopped against Warrington. And, TJ on YouTube or Chilltown Boxing on Twitter, he mentioned that in the live betting odds, the betting odds that get adjusted as the fight proceeds, that Josh Warrington was like at a minus 1100 at a point. Now keep in mind, Josh Warrington was like a plus 300 underdog or something like that going into this fight. But in the middle rounds, again, a minus 1100. So that tells you how much this fight was totally swinging in Josh Warrington's direction. And then Leigh Wood catches him with a right hand towards the end of the 7th round. And then Josh Warrington doesn't go straight down. He's wobbly, jelly leg. Now that's spaghetti leg. And then he kind of turtles up, gets hit with another 4 to 5 punches before finally hitting the canvas, falling back on his head just after the bell sounds. So then Leigh Wood goes back to his corner. He's pumping his fist. Josh Warrington gets up. He's totally hobbled, not like injury hobbled, but like I can't feel my face and legs hobbled, where he looks a little bit like Luke Campbell when he got knocked out by Ryan Garcia, but in the round or two before that, towards the end of the round, where Garcia hurt him badly, probably with a hook. And then you saw Luke Campbell kind of after the bell sounds, kind of stumbling into or hopping into the ropes. That's what Josh Warrington looked like getting up from this knockdown, where again, he took a few extra punches because he didn't go directly down. He stayed up on his feet to absorb some more. So he gets up, hobbles into the turnbuckle, into the corner, basically, where his corner is. And I'm watching this because I thought he was going to recover, but he doesn't turn around to address the ref. Instead, he's hopping in almost like he's got like an ashamed or embarrassed look on his face. Like something clearly isn't right, because he does this stumble into his corner, just puts his arms out to steady himself, kind of catch himself with the ropes. By this point, the ref is still giving him a shot. He's still counting like 7, 8. And he's basically then saying, okay, turn to me. But Josh Warrington was totally just looking outward, seemingly in no position to fight. And the fight's over. Another dramatic win for Leigh Wood. Again, whatever you think about his upper bound limits, to quote Luke Thomas of Morning Combat, Leigh Wood, it's like a whole story. It's playing out in the ring when you're watching a Leigh Wood fight. How can you not pull for Leigh Wood in some of these conditions? Oh man, Leigh Wood did it again. And this might end up being his final fight at featherweight. At this point, I don't see him and Josh Warrington running it back, because that was like the chatter for a minute. They were like, hey, these guys might fight twice depending on how this first fight plays out. Well, to me, this just solidifies how non-durable, because Josh Warrington was doing so good. And maybe they do end up running it back because Josh Warrington was having so much success. So I'm not going to close the door on that possibility. It very well might be the case. But I interpret it as, hey, Josh Warrington got blasted out against Mauricio Lara, and now he got blasted out against Leigh Wood. Yes, he was clearly winning the fight. Over half of the fight was finished, but he still got knocked out in a way that just looked pretty concerning. It wasn't the same type of beating that he took against Mauricio Lara, because in that fight, he got hurt early and often against Mauricio Lara, and then got his lights put out. He didn't get his lights put out here. This was one of those where he goes down and then perhaps gets up too quickly. Like maybe he should have taken a knee, but he might have gotten up too quickly like Zab Judah did against Costa Zoo. And so, yeah, the fight was stopped. But I just look at Josh Warrington at this stage as being one very clean shot away from getting hurt or dropped again. But this was a money right hand. Like it was because Leigh Wood kind of chopped down with it. Josh Warrington's chin was right there to get clobbered, and it did in fact get clobbered. And yeah, so we'll see where they go from here. I suspect that maybe if they do it at 130, they run it back here, but only Leigh Wood knows how the weight cut really affected him here. And a lot of people, including Jay Foreman on YouTube, was pointing out how concerning Leigh Wood looked when stepping on the scales and making weight, that he did not look good. And so that was another one of the possibilities here, is that Leigh Wood's performance might have been due to, and by performance, I don't mean his knockout at the end. I mean him getting beaten up and totally outclassed by Josh Warrington throughout most of this fight. Maybe it was because of the weight cut. So who knows? Does Leigh Wood go to 130 at this point? I mean, 130 is not one of the more stacked divisions, so maybe there's a pathway to him earning a title. I mean, Navarrete's there. I don't think Leigh Wood should fight. I don't know. What do you guys think? Would you guys have liked Leigh Wood versus Navarrete at featherweight when Navarrete was still there? How do you think Leigh Wood would do against Navarrete at 130? Then you've got Hector Garcia. You know, he's the guy who beat Roger Gutierrez, and before that, Chris Colbert. And then most recently, going up to fight Tank Davis, fought well, ended up getting hurt, and then stopped. Well, he made a decision to go no longer after he got badly hurt against Tank Davis. But he's one of the belt holders at 130. And of course, you've got Joe Cordina, who's looking really good, who is a belt holder at 130. And, you know, I wouldn't advise, look, Joe Cordina is really a sweet science guy, but he also apparently has some fire in his gloves when he knocked out Kenichi Ogawa, and then when he beat up on, and it was a split decision. I thought that Joe Cordina should have beaten Shavkat Rakhimov by a couple of rounds. He really put a beating on Shavkat Rakhimov. But yeah, Joe Cordina is no joke, and I don't know how Leigh Wood would do going up to 130 to fight Joe Cordina. And then the other belt holder there is Oshaki Foster, who recently beat Ray Vargas for a vacant WBC 130-pound title. That's one of the belts that Shakur Stevenson vacated. He vacated the 130 WBC belt, which was up for grabs between Oshaki Foster and Ray Vargas, who's the WBC champ down at 126 featherweight, and then the WBO belt that was fought for in a vacant title bout between Emmanuel Navarrete and Liam Wilson. But yeah, let me know what you thought of this Leigh Wood versus Josh Warrington dramatic 7th round knockout. Oh man, Leigh Wood is a fun fighter, y'all. Yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Please like the video, subscribe, and by the way, if they make him versus other featherweights, which is it even worth discussing how he would do against other featherweights, knowing what we suspect and what we've heard from, you know, Ben Davison, his trainer, about the difficulty that he's been having since the Zhu Khan fight in making weight at 126. But yeah, let me know who you would want to see Leigh Wood fight. Look, I suspect he only has a couple more fights in his career left. He's surging very late in his career. Again, he just lost to Jaza Dickens a few years ago. He wasn't seen as like an elite fighter, but he's had the right series of performances against the right guys. Zhu Khan, Michael Conlon, Mauricio Lara, 2 fights with Lara that, you know, the second one he beat Lara, and now he's beaten one of the better fighters in the division, 2-time former IBF featherweight champion in Josh Warrington. So yeah, his resume is stacking up pretty nicely in this late stage of his career. But who would you like to see him fight next? Let me know your thoughts. I'm Woog, and please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.